Welcome to Making UI for Games, a video series in which I will be walking you through the process of how you can design custom UI assets for your games, as well as implement them into the professional video game engine Unity 3D. Hi, my name is Erica, a game developer with 3 years of experience using Unity while studying game development at Centennial College. I currently enjoy designing UI assets as a game UI artist and designer. And as a UI integrator or programmer, I work on implementing my UI art assets into the game engine, as well as making them function properly. As of right now, I use Adobe Photoshop to create my designs, so keep in mind that that is what you will be seeing in this video series. However, there are also many other alternatives available for creating designs and artwork, so use whichever program works best for you. First, let's start off with an introduction to what Game UI is. UI stands for User Interface and refers to the visual elements that provide users with information or are the components that allow users to interact with the software that they are using. Some of these components would be buttons, icons, text headings, images, and many others. When we talk about Game UI, we are referring to a more specific type of visual design in UI. Game UI is UI seen in video games and is used to convey important information to the player or is the interface that the player interacts with. Game UI includes the different menus that players interact with in the video game to get from screen to screen. We have the title screen, main menu, level select, accomplishments, settings, and a multitude of many other menus, as well as even more, depending on the game genre or even the specific game's narrative. For in-game UI, we mainly refer to the game's heads-up display, or HUD. This refers to the various UI components that display different pieces of information necessary for a player to understand the current status of the game progress. For example, in the HUD, we can see health bars that represent player health, counters that keep track of how many coins you've obtained, maps that help you navigate lands, or the quest that the player is currently working on. When designing Game UI, we as UI designers also think about whether or not the UI elements are diegetic or non-diegetic. What do these terms mean? Non-diegetic UI is the typical UI we think of and is the UI made for the player, which exists outside of the game world. For example, a health bar is UI for us as players to view the status of a character's health. In the game's world, there would be no bar hovering above a person's head. It is not a part of the narrative. It is UI conveying information for those playing the game to have a better grasp of their current game situation. Diegetic UI is the opposite of that. It's UI that is incorporated into the game's world. If a game character picks up their phone and we can interact with the UI within the phone, this is UI that has been integrated into the game itself, and that is what we refer to as diegetic. Or, if in a sci-fi game, we have a game character that walks up to operate a hologram which has interactable game UI, that would also be another example of diegetic UI. Diegetic UI is a creative and immersive way of incorporating UI into a game, and if done well, it can be a very effective way of elevating the game's overall experience for players. When designing UI for games, there is a lot of work that goes into planning and research. The UI components should fit with the game's overall style and complement its visual aesthetics. One of my favorite websites to use is GameUIDatabase.com. It's got a comprehensive collection of screenshots that you can look through, which makes this site perfect for research and gathering references. You can look through UI screens by menu type or utilize the many filters to narrow down UI by art style, look for specific UI elements, sort by game platform, or many other specifics that would greatly help out when looking for inspiration. Now, let's move along to the process of creating UI for your games. When creating assets, I work on a 16 by 9 canvas and typically use the standard full screen resolution of 1920 by 1080 with no lower than 300 ppi. This would be different depending on what your screen size is, for example, making UI for a mobile screen. To walk you through my workflow, I will be using my work on Kleptophilia as an example, specifically the main menu design of Kleptophilia. Before starting, I would make an extensive list of all the assets I would need to make for the menu. This would include the logo, background art, menu option buttons, plus the different states, and the specific content needed for each menu button. I start off with brainstorming ideas for what to include in the design. This would include certain themes and symbols that I would want incorporated into the design. I would also look for references from other game UI or images. This is how you can gather inspiration to start creating your sketches and concepts. I would sketch different layouts and also mix and match different ideas to see which one would work best. When working in a team, you may need to get approval from others, so making sure your work is organized with labels or even notes is good practice. In the designing stage, this is the process of creating the UI assets for your game. When drawing and designing, I recommend labeling your layers to stay organized. I also try not to erase things in case I want to keep it for later. Instead, I use masking to hide areas of sketches, or I duplicate layers and erase from the copy while keeping the original layer in case I need to go back to it. When working, we want to work on separate layers for each UI component. For example, we don't want our buttons to be on the same layer as the background. Each item needs to be a separate object from the others. This is for when we export them all individually at the end. For Kleptophilia's main menu, I spent most of my time illustrating the background art and the UI art for the main menu option buttons. This is the final concept, and with that, we are ready to move over our UI design into Unity. In order to do that, we would need to export each UI component individually. I will be walking you through how you can export your art from Photoshop. First, we want to select the art. To do that, we would need to click Control and then click onto the thumbnail of the layer that the art is on. That would select all of the art on that specific layer. I usually hide all the other items and layers in case one item is on top of the other, and I also hide the background in case it is accidentally selected with the art. A shortcut to hide everything other than your specific layer is to hold Control and then click the little eye icon, and that would hide everything other than that specific layer. To undo this, just repeat the same action. And then by clicking Ctrl-Shift-C, you'd be able to copy everything you've selected onto your clipboard. And this is necessary because then we want to click File, New, and make a new canvas. And since we've copied it onto our clipboard, Photoshop would then give us the option to create a canvas of the same size of whatever we just copied. And now, with our new canvas, we paste our UI asset, and I always make sure to hide the background just in case. And with that, we can export. You should make a folder specifically for all of your UI assets, and also stick with a single naming convention for all of your assets in order to keep things organized. This blue squiggle represents a button, and a button with different states, specifically one with a lower opacity highlight around it, an idle normal button state, and a highlighted state. Since I use Photoshop's effects, I would not be able to do the same thing as I previously did for the red square, which was using Shift and then clicking onto the thumbnail in order to select everything on the layer. This doesn't select the highlight around the art. So instead, we just have to make sure that no other art is visible on the canvas except for the art that you need. And then after, we can select around our art, and if we click Control Shift C, we can copy this onto a new canvas. This copies over everything that was selected, minus all of the empty space. There is still a little bit of empty space, but that's just because of the effect and how there's a low opacity glow around the art. You could always manually select even closer, but I tend not to do that in case you end up removing some of that glow accidentally. Now for this final example, I have 3 circles. By clicking Control onto the thumbnail and doing that for all of your layers needed, it doesn't select all 3 of them. Instead, we would need to click Control Shift and then onto the thumbnail, and that adds to your current selection. This way, we would be able to select each and every layer. However, in an example where you have a lot of different layers and your art is on many, many different layers, something that you can do is grab all of your layers and put them into a folder. Then, once you merge that folder, you would very easily be able to select all of the art. And then from there, we repeat the same process where we click Control Shift C, make a new canvas of that exact size, and then export your UI component. And that's all the time I have for this video. Stay tuned for more episodes of Making UI for Games. Thank you so much for watching.